everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. I'm Megha Chaudhary, Vice President and Head of Global Marketing and Alliance Management at C5I. Welcome and thank you for joining us for this session on how AI and agentic approaches are reshaping the insights function, a business practitioner's perspective. Today's discussion will focus on how AI is changing the way organizations design, access, and apply insights. We'll explore how AI and agentic workflows are helping teams respond faster to stakeholder needs, simplify complex data analysis, and scale impact across functions, turning what were once bottlenecks into opportunities for smarter and faster decision making. With that, let me quickly introduce you to the host company C5I. C5I is a pure play AI and analytics provider that combines the power of human perspective with AI technology to deliver trustworthy intelligence. The company drives value through a comprehensive solution set, integrating multifunctional teams that have technical and business domain expertise with a robust suite of products, solutions, and accelerators tailored for various industry specific use cases. At the core, C5I's focus is to deliver business impact at speed and scale by driving AI adoption and AI assisted decision making. Moving on to the housekeeping items. A recording will be available on demand for those who have registered for the webinar today, and we will have the last 15 minutes dedicated to Q&A. You can post your questions in the comment section or the Q&A section. And if you don't get them answered during the live session, please send us your questions at scalewithgenai@c5i.ai. We have a time frame of 45 to 60 minutes, and I hope you stay with us through the end of the webinar. Moving on, let me introduce you to the speakers for the day. Our first speaker for today is John Jerome, General Manager, Research and Insights at Microsoft. John builds high-performing teams that uncover risk, opportunity, and sometimes uncomfortable truths in data. Over 16 years at Microsoft, his teams have delivered billions of dollars in business impact while consistently achieving above-average team health scores. He has helped 3 CMOs shape new brand strategies, developed powerful AI research tools used company-wide, created unique competitive intelligence systems, guided the pricing and positioning of hundreds of products, and replaced vanity advertising metrics with real financial return data. John's career spans roles with US Congressmen, SAP, and Microsoft. He has advised some of the tech industry's most accomplished leaders while working across Prague, Paris, Boston, and Seattle. With 2 patents and recognition from leading industry bodies such as AMA, SOMAR, and ARF, John thrives on using data to drive systemic change. Welcome, John. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Megha and Ashwin and the C5I team. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're very excited. And with that, I'll introduce you all to Ashwin Mittal, Executive Chairman of C5I. Ashwin leads the company with the purpose of amplifying human potential and driving accelerated impact for clients and the community through the ideal combination of human and machine intelligence. Ashwin is responsible for driving long-term strategy, mergers and acquisitions, innovation in AI, corporate social responsibility, and brand initiatives at C5I. Prior to his role, Ashwin was CEO of C5I from 2016 to 2024, and during his tenure as CEO and as the founder of the company since 2003, he has maintained a sharp focus on client centricity, analytics, and AI adoption, and continuous innovation. And that has been the key driving force in architecting C5I's growth into one of the world's leading AI and analytics solution providers. Welcome, Ashwin, as well. And hi, John and Ashwin. Thank you. And I will get the session started. Very excited. And over to you guys.
Great. Thank you, Megha. And look forward to starting off with John's presentation. Thank you, John.
Great, thank you. And yeah, just want to express my appreciation again. Thank you for inviting me today. I'm looking forward to the conversation. I don't know that there's been a more exciting time, at least in my career, to be in the research industry. AI is creating amazing opportunities. I thought I would share some slides and just talk for a few minutes about some of the ways that my team is thinking about and applying AI technology. So let me bring some slides up and share a little bit of my team's perspective. The places where I focus my time and my energy trying to lead the research and insights team at Microsoft, I focus on both culture and impact. I'm a strong believer that without a strong foundation in culture and without spending time and energy to nurture a healthy culture, it's very difficult for us to achieve our potential and impact Microsoft's business. When I think about ways that we impact Microsoft's business, I have three main priorities, and one of them will be the focus of today's conversation, and that's about leading with AI. And when I speak with my team about leading with AI, there's two things that I frequently highlight. The first is that leading with AI, it's really first and foremost a mindset. The ways that we've worked, or when questions come to my team, or when we bring questions to our stakeholders or to our vendor partners, we have to change our mindset and think, how could I apply AI technology? What creative application of new technology could I bring to these business questions or this challenge that I face to support my stakeholders and to help Microsoft make informed decisions? That's the first and probably most important thing when I think about leading with AI is that mindset shift for myself, my teammates, and I would challenge our partners, our stakeholders to the same. The second one I think about leading with AI is doing our job, doing our best to lead the industry with innovative, creative applications of artificial intelligence to accelerate the research process or to generate insights that weren't possible months or last year, last week, sometimes even last month, and build solutions or partner with companies in industry that can help us lead our decision-making processes and lead the industry with creative AI solutions. And when I think about the different technologies that we've used, that we've explored, and some of the technologies that I'll spend some time today talking a little bit about and answering questions, we've looked at AI applications across the research supply chain, and you can see that in the green row across the top of this slide. We use code writing tools, we use traditional machine learning techniques, and some unconventional ML techniques. When we design research, we use artificial intelligence. One place where I'll focus today, where I believe there's tremendous promise already being delivered today, and the potential is, or I think we've really just scratched the surface, is with simulated AI audiences. And we have a tool internally that my team uses with our stakeholders. And we've actually opened it as a web self-service tool to some of our marketing partners called our AI Messaging Assistant, or AMA. We also use AI in the insight generation process, and we use some of Microsoft's tools like Researcher Agent or Analyst Agent for those purposes. And when I think about text, video, audio analytics, we have a tool that we've built on top of our research library called TextCrunch, R&I, my team's name, Research and Insights, R&I Hub Chat, and we have a tool also called TextCrunch. These tools allow us to process information in ways that just recently or even 6 months ago were impossible. Imagine a 10,000 document library and the ability to interact with that, both for discovery or to create synthetic or to synthesize insights from across that research library. And these three areas that are boxed in red, those are places where my team has built tools internally, AI research tools to support the R&I team and also to support our stakeholders as they make decisions. When I think about fiscal year 26, which for Microsoft is July 1st to the end of June, and so we're early in our fiscal 26, there's three things that are most important to me when I think about leveraging AI technology. The first is using AI to enhance research. That might be using AI prompted qual at scale, for example, or using technology in the background like knowledge graph technologies and GraphRag to process information in new and creative ways that allow us to generate insights that can really support the business. And also, it's about democratizing knowledge with AI. Now, that might be, for example, R&I Hub Chat, which allows anyone in Microsoft to interact with our knowledge management system in ways that make it really simple to surface information in the library or to synthesize data and reports that we've delivered over time. Or another way to think about democratizing knowledge with AI is using artificial intelligence to extract additional value from qualitative work or to extract value from data assets that we have, that we maybe have generated reports and delivered insights, and then those data assets find new utility when we explore them with artificial intelligence. And on the far right here, improving marketing decisions. And our main stakeholder population are marketers. And so most of our work is supporting marketing and marketing decisions. And our ability to scale that decision influence with our stakeholders, it's really changed the way that we operate over the past year. And in particular, the AI messaging assistant that we use. And think of that as a way to interact with target audiences that are important to Microsoft's business in conversational ways. And we built several of these agents, and they allow us to generate, for example, new marketing copy or messages, or test a value prop, or test product concepts to understand how those target audiences will respond. And those AI messaging assistants are trained on extensive research, extensive primary research data, transactional data, sometimes social media data that we've gathered over the years. And that's a really important learning for my team, is the quality of the data we use to build AI research solutions is critical for our success. As is always the case, garbage in, garbage out. Those very specialized tools that we've built, in particular these AI audience assistants, AI messaging assistants, they're really powerful because of the data that we've collected over time, the high quality data that these things are grounded in. And so when I think about FY26, these are the three places where I believe my team has an opportunity to support Microsoft, to support folks making decisions under uncertainty, and use artificial intelligence to expand the set of decisions that we can inform with voice to customer data. That's just a really quick overview of how my team thinks about using artificial intelligence to improve the insights function. And like I said at the beginning, the thing that I think is most important is changing our mindset. Every question that comes every time we start a project, when we interact with stakeholders facing challenging business situations, asking ourselves and thinking, how can I leverage technology to answer this question to improve the insight function? I think about that as job one for myself, and challenging my teammates and our partners like C5I to do the same. Ashwin, that's what I had for slides. I'll stop sharing, and I think I'll hand it over to you.
Great, great. No, thank you, John. Thank you so much for a very interesting and insightful presentation. And you shared a lot of interesting pieces around the various things that y'all are doing. For us at C5I, we've had the privilege of working with you and your team for a long time. And it's really been, an opportunity to see, how you all always look to adopt new ways of working. And it has helped us in our own learning and developing ourselves as an organization. So thank you for that. And thank you for sharing some of these insights. So then, John, we'll go a little bit into Q&A, and love to ask you some questions about some of the things you shared, and some of your broader perspectives around use of AI in the market research and insights function. So I'll start things off by asking you some questions, and then later on maybe we'll hand over to the audience. And if any of the audience members have questions, please do post them in the chat window, and then we'll take them up, as we go along. So John, you spoke a little bit about AI agents and use of, AI in the process of market research. Now, if theoretically, if we could have autonomous AI conducting market research itself, where classic primary market research is a series of steps. And theoretically, maybe we could have AI and agents that perform different steps in the process and hand over to each other, and manage everything from research design, data collection, leading to insights, reporting, analysis, etc. So one is, do you think that that's possible? Is that already possible today? And then the other question related to that is that, does that then mean people in the business, people in brand teams, product teams, marketing teams, could they perhaps interact with such a system and directly ask business questions the system goes and does the research and provides answers. Is that good? Is that desirable? Is that possible? What are the risks there? Also, would love to get your overall thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a great question, Ashwin. And also, I just wanted to thank you. Our teams have been partnered. It's not often that with a partnership like the one that our teams have, we measure in decades, not in years. And so I'm grateful for the partnership over time, and for the opportunity today to talk about our industry and data science research and insights. So thank you. I appreciate the partnership and the chance to talk today.
Thank you,
Your
John.
question, yeah, your question's a good one. We actually carry as a big bet across our team an effort to automate parts of the research workflow with artificial intelligence, and I think there's real opportunity there. But I don't know if, and in a way that's powerful, but it can also be potentially limiting in that it keeps us within the same frame. That notion of a question comes from stakeholders, and we automate the process of gathering data to answer that question. I think about, and there is value there, and my team is using agent technology. We're learning how to use agent technology to automate the research workflow. And that's great. I think there are opportunities to improve efficiency, quality, take time out of the process between business intent being expressed. I want to pursue this audience. I want to shift price. I want to design and execute a fantastic campaign, to take time and space between business intention and execution and collapse that time and space. I think that's powerful. And but I don't know that there's a point in the future where we won't have hybrid approaches where we might have agents, we might be gathering feedback from voice of customer, and we may have trained researchers, really expert researchers, participating in the process. I think the way that my team approaches artificial intelligence, there are workflow automation opportunities that can come with agents. There are also new ways to extract value from information. I think that's probably the most promising aspect of artificial intelligence. And I think there will always be a role for the skilled, trained research expert to bring a point of view, to bring intelligence to design or to analysis. I don't know that that changes, or that that would be a good thing if it did change. I think it's more about smart systems with those talented researchers, trained agents using high quality data, and sometimes for certain decisions, marketers operating independently with voice of customer infusing their decisions. I'll give you one tangible example of that, the AI messaging assistants that I mentioned. For a certain class of questions, we have confidence using those agents and marketers using those agents in a self-serve way to load their copy, for example, have the agent refine that copy and have the agent explain its reasoning for edits. That still empowers the marketer to make choices. But in that case, what we're frequently doing is taking the decision set in the bullseye where we could afford the time and cost to do research to inform really important questions. We're expanding the set of questions that you can apply voice of customer to. We're using AI to do that. And to presume that the quality in the bullseye is the same as we move out from the bullseye to lower risk decisions, but decisions that you maybe want to, or that you need to make really quickly, we're expanding the set of questions where you can apply the voice of our customer to inform decisions. That's super powerful. It's not necessarily about replacing a way that we did research or do research. It's about expanding the decision set that can be informed, albeit with AI messaging assistance. It is sort of a type of synthetic response, but it's grounded in voice of customer. We're expanding the number of decisions that are infused with that powerful information. I think that can be quite powerful.
Oh, great, John. Very interesting. So I think clearly there is a lot of value add that one can have from using AI for certain things. And in other things, we do need, the design skills and other skills that, our people bring in. And I think what you sort of alluded to, and maybe I'd love to talk a little bit more about examples of this, is that human AI combination, right? There's a lot of focus, that goes on around AI that will lead to more productivity, more efficiency, and things like that, which is all true and can be true in many ways. But I think we would love to talk more about, and we should talk more about, how human and AI, the combination of the two, right? Where you're really bringing in the human perspective and the power of the AI to provide a better insight or a better result. Are there any interesting examples that you could perhaps share of a specific type of initiative or application where that combination gave you something better than maybe what people would have done or what AI would have done? That would be really interesting to hear.
Yeah, it's a great question. I've learned from a really talented teammate about this notion of positionality that the researcher, in a good way, in a healthy way, brings a perspective grounded in experience and an understanding of a business challenge. The researcher brings that perspective, that positionality to a research exercise, and that informs how one interprets data or the question that the researcher might ask in a qualitative setting or design principles in a study. And that is really challenging to replicate, particularly um, in a fast-moving, complex environment. It's challenging to replicate that positionality that the researcher brings to the process. That said, artificial intelligence it doesn't fatigue, for example, which is a simple example. But if you're intending to refine, I don't know, you're looking at 10 script options or you're refining 50 pieces of social media copy, the AI doesn't fatigue. There isn't the same cost and effort to use artificial intelligence to refine those 50 pieces of copy. That's a live fire example from my team, or to stack rank things that would be impossible to otherwise do. And so I think it is a balancing act. There's also oftentimes when we use technology to extract meaning from large volumes of qualitative information, without that assistance and experience that comes from a talented research expert, you can end up stack ranking things out of qualitative and it'll be useless information that says, price matters. Okay, that's not particularly helpful. It might be frequently mentioned, it might be part of the conversation, and it's not super helpful. And that's not a comment on Microsoft or anyone else's AI technology, but adding the human element to interpret what's really important, what's germane to the business question that we're attempting to answer. That overlay in combination with artificial intelligence, which can process volumes of qualitative information in ways that are challenging for people to do, that combination is really powerful. And we see that pretty consistently. In some ways, it's sort of like a code frame for qualitative, applying that layer of intelligence that comes from both understanding the audience that we're researching and the business questions we're trying to answer. And that pairing can be super powerful. Now, sometimes we might be doing research and there's really no application of artificial intelligence. It's just the researcher doing their job well. Other times, like the AI messaging assistant, we might feel sufficiently confident to ask researchers to focus their time on higher value questions and let the technology trained on really high quality data for a very specific audience answer questions and propose how our audience might respond to 5 naming options or a blog post, for example. And that, again, allows us to expand where we can infuse voice of customer and have influence without taking the researcher's time to manage that effort.
That's great, John. Thank you so much. That was very interesting and comprehensive and very helpful. So, John, switching tracks a little bit now, there are various other data sources that a lot of companies employ in generating insights. And classical market research, quantitative market research has been more or less about survey data. And I know that your team is using a lot of other data sources, and you also alluded to that in your initial talk. So would love to learn a little bit about what data sources you are using. Has that been changing and growing in the last 2, 3 years? And how is that helping you to, are you then using it to better answer business questions, the same questions, or are you now being asked to answer new types of questions which you were not answering before? How is that mix of what you're doing or what you're deriving for internal clients changing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would answer that in two ways. First, my team is um, in many ways we're data source agnostic. I'm interested in the business question that needs to be answered and finding conventional or unconventional ways to answer that question. And that's true whether I'm applying AI or not. And so, as an example, we have a social media practice. We've analyzed social media data for a long time and used that in appropriate ways. It's not, there are great applications, and then there are applications that I frequently see that give me pause. Or we'll use external telemetry sources to understand behavior patterns and adoption of technologies from Microsoft or from others in industry. And we'll use conventional qualitative or AI prompted qualitative or quantitative market research. We're pretty independent of source data, and we're always on the hunt for interesting sources of information that can help us answer questions. That's true independent of the application of AI. Now, one thing that's, and we have so much to learn, but that's really energizing and I think quite powerful is the ability to mix sources in ways that are different than how I've conventionally thought about multiple sources, where there's um, a lot of pre-processing and respect for the difference in the sources. With some of the tools and techniques we've been using, knowledge graph and graph rag is a great example. The ability to mix news information as a source with social media data, with qualitative transcripts, and then use graph technology to inspect and understand and find patterns in those sources. That is quite powerful. Or the audience agents that we build, we use a mix of data sources. I think what's most important when we think about those data sources, are they applicable to the business question? Are they representative? Are they high quality data? And then when we use those data sources, getting into the complexity of how we weight those data sources, how not weighting in a conventional quantitative survey weighting notion, but what role they play in the response that's drawn from an AI system. And is it something do you want to chat with those multiple sources, ask questions, or are we creating more conventional deliverables that might look like visualizations that you would see in PowerPoint? Maybe not trend charts, but word association type of deliverables. And so again, my team's heritage is this independence. We're not wedded to one or any particular source of information. That was true and stays true. How we use those varied sources, that's really changing. The ability to commingle or intermingle different data sources. And there's risk there if you overweight one source. If you have, I don't know, 8 qualitative transcripts and 10,000 quant responses, how do you manage that when you're building an agent that represents the voice of customers that data is captured from? And so, yeah, I would say that we maintain our independence is maybe better than agnostic, but our interest in using whatever source can answer the question and then leveraging those sources with AI, it's a lot easier to mix different types, disparate data sources to generate insight.
Thank you, John. Again, very comprehensive and interesting, and various parts of that were very interesting. And I thought it was quite intriguing that you're using knowledge graph technology, knowledge graph and graph rag, to tie together information from different sources. Matter of fact, there is I think, a question from the audience on that. So we'll come back to knowledge graph later. But that was very interesting. So now with all this, John, going back to our previous conversation about using AI, with AI, there are also risks. And there are risks around accuracy, relevance, ethics, so various risks. And the risks could be in using AI in the process, or the risk could be using AI as a simulated audience or in various means, right? Wanted to hear your thoughts on what you think those, are there any risks that you would highlight, that you would caution us about, is, really something that we really need to think about, and then what approach do you use to mitigate and manage these kind of risks in your business?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, like any new technology, of course, there are benefits and risks associated with leveraging artificial intelligence. There's a speaker at Microsoft, works for our office of the CTO, Jared Lanier, I believe is his name. He gave a presentation that I found really compelling. He talked about artificial intelligence as a way to um, understand and interact with data that represents some very specific, or it can be very narrow and specific, or a broad part of human history. It allows us to understand and interact and um, learn from a data set that represents some small part or large part of history. And I think that can be a really powerful framing when we think about risks. If you have a data set that represents small and medium businesses, and that data set represents their attitudes and maybe some behavioral data over the past 18 months. From a mindset perspective, we should be asking questions that are relevant to that history that that data set represents. So if I'm using that data to train an SMB agent, I should be asking questions that are germane to that history that data is meant to represent. If I step outside of those boundaries and ask it questions about something unrelated to that, the underlying training data set, I'll get answers, but they're not particularly useful. And as a researcher, just like if I'm running even a crosstab, for example, with the data set, I need to know the audience. I need to know the weighting scheme. I have to have some appreciation for the data, and not misuse that information. The same as because that data represents some small part of history, a period when we asked people their opinions and gathered those opinions or that sentiment or price tolerance, whatever it might be. The same is true for artificial intelligence system, respecting the input data when you're trying to generate insight or knowledge. That's probably most important. Now, how does that translate into practical ways of operating? Um, Testing, testing, testing. It's so important that as we build systems, we have, and there, in some cases there are, in other cases it's challenging to test the efficacy, the validity, the utility of systems or agents that we build. And there are good tools and approaches to compare output to data input. But if all I'm doing is replicating exactly what's in my survey data set, my qualitative, my competitive telemetry. If all I'm doing is exactly replicating that, it's not really useful. It's stretching the boundaries of the data set. Again, that notion of a bullseye where we influence, and stretching the data and our own practices to influence broader decisions with that voice of customer data. There are good testing mechanisms. I think that's super important. We also do A/B testing. So if we use these agents to generate or refine a value prop, or a messaging or a blog post or a relationship management email, we have A/B tested. How does that AI informed outbound communications compare to a conventional way of creating another form of testing? More expensive, it's taxing, but I think quite important. Or we'll use agents to answer questions. And my team, if any of them join or hear this, they'll be familiar with this refrain. ask the agent first. If you're going to do the research anyways, compare the results at the end. It's an unsystematic way to build our confidence or to understand the parameters that we should work within. I also think when we're rolling out new technology, I'm a believer in centrally managing if we're dealing with new and untested approaches, and that could be a conventional research method or an AI agent, um, to manage that centrally with some pretty tight constraints in the beginning, and then decentralize access to that technology, but so that we can ensure that the data that informs the agent is high quality and the agent's responses conform to the data set, that those processes, we try to manage those pretty centrally, but access, once we build confidence, we can roll that out to lots of stakeholders. But I wouldn't want lots of stakeholders uploading their own data and using that to inform the agent's response. That feels like an accountability or responsibility that my team needs to hold. And yeah, just to reiterate, test, 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 whether you have systematic ways or qualitative ways, but maintaining that curiosity and finding opportunities to understand risks we might not otherwise appreciate. That seems super important from my perspective.
Thank you, John. Very interesting again, and around various, types of risks and various guardrails that we should look to use. There was an interesting comment you made, which almost tied together with something you said in a previous, in one of your previous answers, where you talked about respecting the source data, right? Whatever the AI is trained on something at the end of the day. And this reminded, and we also talked about researcher skill. And a classic researcher skill is sampling, right? How you sample a population. So the AI is also learning from something that it's been exposed to, from which you're trying to extrapolate to something else. So you really have to respect the source and what you're trying to infer. So on that note, I wanted to ask you one maybe last question before we hand over to the audience, is about people skills, right? We talked enough about a lot about AI, and at the end of the day, we believe that it's the right human and AI combination. So keeping that in mind, how do you think the skills for researchers and for research departments are evolving now and for the future? Any thoughts on how you are preparing your team to do that, and how are you cultivating the culture of AI adoption in your own organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I should stress that when I'm talking about AI research tools, I'm talking about, or most of what I've been reflecting on and answering your questions, Ashwin, are sophisticated tools that my team's built or that we've partnered with companies like yours to employ in our market research practices. It's also really powerful to use, and I work for Microsoft, so Copilot is our tool of choice, but I appreciate that there are lots of impressive tools in the market. What I've been talking about are specialized research and insight tools that leverage AI, and using tools like Copilot or ChatGPT to answer questions, to inform yourself as you're designing research, to even edit PowerPoint slides, to revise content. Of course, all of that is really important as well. And I wasn't speaking generally about Microsoft. I'm talking about the research tools my team builds. To your question on skills, that is a place where I would start. If you're not finding ways in your day-to-day activities to infuse AI technology into the work that you do, then you're missing opportunity. So leveraging technologies like Copilot in your day-to-day work, that's really powerful and a skill that we look for in the team. So many ideas, if it's brainstorming, if it's refining, if it's researching, if it's using the researcher agent with deep reasoning, these are really powerful tools. And working those into day-to-day workflow is really important and a skill that we look for. And I would say that beyond that, which I think is true for anyone who's in the information worker business, I believe that's true. Three things that I think are really important when I think about the researcher's role. The first is, again, mindset, an openness, a willingness to explore new ways to work and to think differently. Like I said at the beginning, I don't think there's been a more exciting time to be in the research industry. These technologies and tools are incredibly powerful. And so changing mindset and having an openness, a willingness to explore, and to bring a really healthy dose of skepticism, I think that is part of what I look for and what my team, when I see us really excelling, it is an open mindset. Again, with that healthy dose of skepticism. Another is just that general AI skills, again, using the tools that are at our disposal every day to benefit our work and also to get familiar with what's possible. And then I do think that there is a rebalancing of technical and social science skills. I don't think there's been a time, and I've been at this for some time and worked for SAP and Microsoft and as a consultant in the tech industry. I don't think there's been a time where the technical tools have evolved as quickly as they have in the past maybe 3 years. And I'm not saying every social scientist needs to be like a Python expert, but having an appreciation for how LLMs work, how RAG works, how knowledge graph technology works, uh, even a basic understanding is really helpful. That paired with social science skills, that combination, I think, is quite powerful and something that, again, in my team, those are skills that we look for, that mindset, general AI skills, and this kind of balancing act of appreciating the technology, what it can do, how it functions. And we do have a data science team that has very deep technical skills, but I'm talking more generally. That balance of technical skill and social science skill, I think, is increasingly important.
Great. Thank you, John. Thank you so much. That was great for me, very insightful, and I'm sure great for the audience. I'll go over, maybe we'll spend some time going over some questions that we've received, and I'll invite any additional questions on the chat. If anyone wants to post, please, on the Q&A tab, please go ahead. So John, there is a question around, and it's a long question, so I'll just phrase it for you, is a question around how you train your virtual audiences. So there's a question around, how you build that, how you train it, and how do you make it such that it's representative of the work that you want to do yourself. So can you share any thoughts and insights around that and best practices and pitfalls, if any?
Yeah, yeah. I can, and I have the privilege of working with a really talented data science team. And so I don't want to try and speak for them because I lack the skills and expertise that they bring to the team. But I'll do my best to answer the question. The agents that we've built, and I'm thinking specifically about our audience agents, they're meant to respond to questions like an IT professional or an information worker or a security decision influencer. The most important um, aspect of building those agents is the high quality data we use to train the agents, or training and RAG. We use different approaches, or combination of the two. The quality of the input data is really important. And we've found over time that um, it's not necessarily the volume of data that's really powerful. It's the diversity of perspective in the data, different attitudinal perspectives, different behavioral aspects of how the target audience thinks and feels and acts. That diversity of data is quite important. Qualitative data is also really important. Transcripts allow us to get closer to the customer's voice and answer questions with these AI messaging assistants or these AI audience tools in ways that feel true to the customer's voice. And so the input data, the training data is super important in creating an agent that can respond with quality, um, and represent our target audience and allow us again to expand our influence without running net new research. Another thing that we've learned is that there are oftentimes gaps in our knowledge. We didn't gather data to build these agents. we gather data to answer business questions, and we reuse that data to train agents. Increasingly, I see opportunities for us to fill those gaps and to gather customer feedback specifically to train agents, not necessarily to answer a narrow business question, but to gather data to train our agents. And that's probably the most important learning is the quality of the data and the diversity of perspective in the data, which allows us to create these really dynamic AI audience agents. Um, that's one of the more significant learnings, I think, is the importance of that data and the diversity of the data that we use. Trying to think of other pitfalls or challenges, or again, back to the comment I made before, when our researchers use these agents, they have to be grounded in the underlying data set. It's not productive. It's not, in some cases, we do allow, like I said, marketers for um, copy evaluation type scenarios or messaging evaluation. But if you're going to ask sophisticated questions, the researcher has to have deep understanding of the training data set and use judgment to determine if the question we're trying to answer should it reasonably be informed by that data set or not. And if not, we're probably in a zone that's unproductive.
That's great, John. Thank you. And again, brings us back to right the best use of the skills of the team and skills of the researchers, and then optimally using the AI. So maybe I'll just take one last question from what I have from the audience, and then we're running out of time. We may have to wrap up. But there's a question around use of knowledge graph and graph rag, which you spoke about. To whatever extent you can share a little bit about why it's useful in the market research context. You had talked about finding correlations between different types of sources of data, and the question is about that and also about how you set it up. But I mean, if you can just throw any light on that, because from what I know, a lot of I've not heard much of research departments using knowledge graph and graph rag. So that's really interesting. Otherwise, it's used in supply chain and pharmaceutical R&D and also. So really interested and intrigued about that. So please do share some more.
Yeah. And I'm early in our journey there. Some of the folks on my team have much deeper experience with graph database and graph rag. Um, the thing that's encouraging my team to take advantage of graph technology, qualitative information. Um, it's become more cost effective, more efficient to gather qualitative information from the marketplace with things like AI generated qualitative interviews or AI prompted verbatims in surveys. Um, and so the cost to like you can almost think of it as a change in the economics of cost per word. It's now more efficient to gather information, qualitative information from our customers. That's super rich data. The ability to leverage LLMs to extract from that qualitative data from news sources, from social media, to extract intelligence to populate a graph database, and then using various algorithms to extract information from that knowledge graph. That is quite powerful. And I do believe, and we're still, like I said, we're early in our journey here, but it is we've had some really exciting early wins using um, graph technology to make sense of and extract information and value from that huge collection of words that is becoming less expensive to gather from the marketplace. I'll give you one quick example. We have a tool that is new. We're still piloting the tool, but it combines social media information with news articles. We actually had a side by side where we used vector search to ask questions and a knowledge graph to ask the exact same question. The responses are both useful, but fundamentally different. And that was sort of my first semi-technical. I didn't build any of this stuff. I'm a user and try to understand how we can add value for the business. But it was compelling to me to see these two things side by side. They were quite different. It was almost one was kind of as if you hired a news analyst. The other was more similar to hiring a business consultant. And those things in combination, I think, will be quite powerful. And it was fun, I think, because my team knows I like to um, scratch the surface and try and understand how the technology works to see the answers side by side. And we are now layering in qualitative transcripts. And that really started to show for me the promise of extracting information, really powerful information from really large volumes of qualitative data and adjacent qualitative sources. And so I don't know, Ashwin, we maybe get together and do this again a year from now, but my team is betting pretty substantially. One of our big bets is on um, reinventing the way we think about brand measurement and using high frequency qualitative feedback plus adjacent sources processed with graph technology. We'll see how that all comes together, but early returns are quite exciting.
Well, that's really interesting, John. Matter of fact, at C5I, we are also have been using graph technology more recently, and we haven't been using it in the context of research and insights. So that's great. That's a really interesting aha for me to go back and discuss with my team. But thank you so much, John, for patiently answering all our questions. For me, it's been fascinating, a lot of learning, a lot of reflection. And with that, we'll hand over to Megha to do the wrap up.
Yes, great session. Thank you, John, for such an insightful take on the use of AI and agentic approaches in the research and insights function. And thank you, Ashwin, for a great conversation on how to lead with AI. I'm sure everyone had a lot of key takeaways. My key takeaway was obviously the importance of mindset shift when adopting AI at the core, critical role of data quality in building effective AI systems, expanding decisions with voice of customer at the center, and using AI as a way to understand and interact with human history. I think that was very powerful, John. Thank you for sharing that. Emphasizing testing to mitigate risk. So at the core, the most important takeaway is that a mindset shift paired with a very healthy dose of skepticism is what will enable us to harness AI and agentic approaches responsibly and effectively. So thank you again. What a great discussion. And thank you to the speakers. Thank you to everyone who joined in for our session today. Again, recording will be available if you want to tune in. You've registered, you've attended the webinar. And if you have any other questions, please write to us on scalewithgenai@c5i.ai. Thank you again. Thanks all.